Good evening, everyone. I'm Travis Jensen, Vice President of Leadership Initiatives here at the SDSU Alumni Association. On behalf of the Alumni Association and South Dakota State University, I want to extend a warm welcome to the second annual Jumpstart Your Wellness Seminar. It's exciting to finally be here this afternoon after very much anticipation. I'd like to take this moment to welcome our alumni and friends who are watching via Zoom today. We're so glad that you were able to join us as well. The Jumpstart Your Wellness Seminar is intended to shine a light on the importance of investing in one's health and well-being. More than ever before, we're seeing an increasing emphasis on wellness and self-care, encompassing not just physical health, but also mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Our aim with this seminar is to ignite your interest, provide a push, and hopefully help you jumpstart your journey to a healthier you. We're thrilled about the presentation lineup that we have for you today. We hope these talks will stimulate thought, inspire you, and encourage all of us to be a little bit more deliberate about our wellness. This year, we're also introducing 2 wellness guides as part of the seminar experience. These guides will help us understand how each topic relates to the overall health and wellness. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first wellness guide. Sherry Landmark is a 2-time graduate of SDSU and currently serves as the Chief Wellness Officer for South Dakota State University. In this role, she provides leadership to the Miller Wellness Center and its many services, including student health clinic, counseling services, and fitness and recreation programs. Sherry is also involved in several university and division-wide committees supporting the university's mission and goals. Please join me in welcoming Sherry Landmark.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight, both in person and on Zoom. But I'm just so proud to be part of this university. We have made a lot of really great movements through the years I've been here. Actually, in May, it'll be 25 years since I've worked on campus, so celebrate that tonight too. But it's really moved forward, and just this last year with us having a new strategic plan here at the university, the Pathway to Premier, has really embraced the employee well-being for the university, and we're really proud of that. With that, they have also had a new unit called University Wellbeing, which really focuses, and I have some colleagues in the room that have really helped move that along, but we're really excited to get that going. So this is kind of our unveil today of our new dimensions of wellness model. Before we had a circular model, and really wanted to look at more of a forward-moving model. And if you think of this as kind of a cha-cha, like some of these might move forward a little bit, they might go back, they might come forward again. We have our To Be Fit down here, ladies. You understand, right? We do a little dancing in class sometimes, but not always will that digital or that occupational piece be out in front and be successful at that. It might be lagging behind. So with our dimension, it's always hopefully forward-facing, and that can move throughout your lifetime. So I know this is a lot of words, and I'm just want you have a handout in front of you with all of this. For those at home, if you need a handout, we can get you one at another time. But if I could go back to that other slide, I'm just going to quick look at the dimensions. The physical dimension, you might think, oh, she's going to go ask me to go run a marathon or something. Nope. It's really going out and being aware of your physical being, getting your annual checkups, making sure that you're listening to your body. Social, maintaining healthy relationships, also interacting with others. Part of the other piece is that digital wellness. If you go out to a restaurant somewhere, and I see most people are really good, they're not on their phones, but put your phone down at mealtime and actually have a conversation with the people you're with. I really do appreciate that, and I get after my family sometimes for that. I'm guilty sometimes, and I get after my staff too. If we're in a meeting, like, phones are down, put them away, we need to be present. Which also comes to be with the mindful piece. Just kind of being part of something larger, being mindful of our actions and how that does affect other people, because we don't know maybe what the person next to us was going on or had going on in their life, or something happened this morning. So you just need to be mindful for one another. Financial. We've got Bruce here tonight to be able to touch into that piece, but being able to prepare for that so you're not as stressed out. You know, some of you might have had to pay in for your tax return here this last week. Maybe some got a little extra in your pocket, so that's moving forward on this continuum. But really, it's just planning and being prepared and being educated on that. Environmental. Who brushed their teeth this morning? Okay. All right, good. Everyone rolls their hand for those of you on Zoom. But did you think back to that? Did you shut the water off when you were brushing your teeth this morning? Or did you let it run? And if you can't remember, when you brush your teeth the next time, think about that. That's part of environmental. But also understanding your surroundings. Are you safe? Are you comfortable with your surroundings and who you're surrounded with? The last one, I guess I did mention digital already, and emotional. Understanding your own emotions, and also accepting your limitations and understanding those limitations, where there might be a time where you're stressed out, or you just maybe need to step away, or you just need to let someone know how you feel and let them know your perspective. So today, with all of these wonderful dimensions and these wonderful speakers following me tonight, we really hope that we can wrap all this together to give you some tools to be successful in all of these dimensions and really understand how they really intertwine and wrap together in your lifestyle. So thank you so much for the opportunity tonight, and I look forward to the rest of the speakers.
Thank you for that, Sherry. The resources that Sherry has shared, including the packets that are on your table, will be an incredibly helpful resource for you as we look to connect the next 3 presentations. It is my pleasure to introduce our first presenters. April Schneider is a certified nurse practitioner who has worked in the healthcare field for over 25 years in a variety of medical settings, including the United States Air Force, Sanford Intensive Care Unit, Sanford Clinic here in Brookings, before she actually landed at the SDSU Student Health Clinic in 2021. April earned her Bachelor of Science degree in nursing, as well as her Master of Science in nursing in the Family Nurse Practitioner specialty right here at SDSU. Caitlin Walters is a well-being specialist at South Dakota State University. She has a master's degree in kinesiology from LSU and undergraduate degrees in psychology, recreation, and tourism from the University of Utah. In her role at SDSU, she is responsible for health promotion and the implementation of campus-wide initiatives. She also supports the work of various well-being committees here on campus. Please help me welcome April Schneider and Caitlin Walters.
Good evening, everyone. I'm April.
And I'm Caitlin Walters. We have a little bit of a height difference between the two of us if you couldn't tell, so we want to make sure you can hear both of us. So we're here to talk about getting better sleep. I would say that sleep is something that we're both passionate about. We've presented about sleep across campus to different groups. I may be passionate about it out of desperation, I often don't feel like I get good enough sleep at night, but it's something that we both really care about, and so we just like to talk about getting better sleep and how sleep impacts our overall well-being. So thinking back to the dimensions of wellness that Sherry just shared with us, we wanted to put sleep at the center of those dimensions and consider how sleep is going to interact with all of the different dimensions of well-being and how those dimensions can also impact our sleep as well. So it's kind of a two-way relationship here, but thinking how getting good sleep at night can actually do a variety of wonderful things for our physical well-being. It can improve our immunity, can help with balance, coordination, and speed. A lot of performance-based things can be benefited by getting good sleep, including injury prevention, muscle gains, for those of you who care about gains, can impact those as well, recovery, and then also chronic disease prevention, including high blood pressure, heart disease, and diabetes. When we think about emotional well-being, sleep can impact our mood regulation. It can impact our stress hormones, our alertness and attention, problem solving, and decision-making skills. It can also impact our learning and memory, which is really important too. Social. We've all seen those coffee cups that say, "Don't talk to me until I've had my coffee," right? Sleep can impact our mood, right? So it impacts how we get along with other people, how we interact in the world. It can impact our relationships, our empathy, willingness to resolve conflict, and openness to others. Financial, thinking about how sleep can impact our decision-making skills. There was also a study that said that getting good sleep can reduce the need for immediate gratification. Interesting thought. And then thinking about mindfulness, sleep's gonna impact our mood and emotional regulation, and just our ability to live out our values too. Occupational, obviously, our job performance, our alertness can help us avoid burnout, and it can help us with our memory issues. So we're going to get into a little bit of kind of the science behind sleep, and then we'll go over some of the things that are in your packet about how to get better sleep.
So this is a sleep cycle. The first sleep cycle is usually the shortest in your evening or your night of sleep, where we can get anywhere from 70 to 100 minutes of that type of sleep. The later sleep cycles are going to be more towards your 90, 120 minutes. And each of those cycles involves your stage 1, your stage 2, your stage 3, and your stage 4. Stage 4 is where you get your REM sleep. That's where you're dreaming. But stage 3 is the important one. That's the one where we're doing our deep sleep. We're becoming more resilient. We're making memories. It's kind of where we're learning to cope with those stressful situations that you'll kind of encounter throughout the day. So if we can get into the sleep cycles, then we're going to get that restorative type of sleep and be able to recover a little bit better.
So one thing to consider when you're thinking about sleep is to start by tracking your sleep. How much sleep are you getting at night? We know that the average adult needs between 7 to 9 hours of sleep. If you're pretty physically active or you're highly active, you want to be closer to that 9 hours of sleep. So start by tracking your sleep. There are tons of apps out there. I don't need to go through it. A lot of us have smartwatches, it's that digital wellness piece, but those smartwatches can help you track and see what your sleep quality and quantity looks like. So then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the potential causes of insomnia. We're not going to go too much into these, but we do want to talk about a little bit of each of these.
So first off, we have some mood disorders. Depression is right up there at the top. About 75% of people with depression will have trouble sleeping. Their mind is somewhere else. It's not on getting that sleep. Anxiety, people are worrying too much. They're not able to get to sleep because they keep replaying those negative things that happened throughout the day or that maybe even happened back in 3rd grade. They're remembering those things, and that's an item that will make them anxious in the future. PTSD is not on my sheet here, but that one is something that can cause nightmares and an issue with keeping a good sound sleep. Bipolar disorder, we have trouble with mania versus depression. They're going back and forth. Schizophrenia, which can have difficulty telling the difference between what's real and what's not real. And then we move on to ADHD. ADHD, which most people aren't even aware, can cause trouble sleeping because they have difficulty falling asleep and then just staying asleep as well. So then they're tired all day long, which makes it more difficult for them to cope with their attention deficit. Autism, some autism patients or autistic patients are not verbal, so we have trouble learning from them. But if you ask their caregivers, they're going to tell you they had a rough night sleeping. Now they're having more behavioral issues today. So it's all connected. There are other things, including medication, that can affect our sleep. A lot of times we'll try to treat our mood with an SSRI, which is a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It's made for mood, for depression or anxiety. And what happens with that type of medication or with using alcohol is that our REM sleep is decreased. So that part where we're dreaming isn't quite as long as it's supposed to be. Stimulants like caffeine or ADHD medications also decrease the amount of time that it takes us, or increase the amount of time that it takes us to fall asleep. So we're laying in bed a lot longer trying to think of those things that we need to remember to do the next day. Medications that we use to make us sleepy can make us sleepy, but we oftentimes will wake up into the early parts of the morning, and then we have a foggy day the next day. So there are pluses and minuses with any medication that we use, and it would be up to your provider to kind of make sure that they talk about that before prescribing a medication for you.
So then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the behaviors and environmental things that can impact your good night's sleep. So number one is stimulating behaviors. Now, getting vigorous exercise during the day can actually help you sleep better at night. However, there are some studies that show that getting vigorous exercise late in the day or before bedtime is actually a stimulating behavior. So while exercise is good, it's going to help you sleep, the timing of the day when you get that exercise may impact your ability to fall asleep, might keep you awake a little bit longer. We all know it. Screen time is keeping us awake at night. As we scroll in bed, thinking I'm just going to scroll before I fall asleep, or I'm just going to watch this TV show before I fall asleep. Screen time is a stimulating behavior. It's going to impact your ability to get a decent quality night's sleep. So telephone, TV, your cell phone, computer, all of those things are impacting your sleep. Napping is something that can help you get a little bit more sleep. There is some science behind like when and how long you should be napping. And we do have some of that information on our handout. Also just a lack of a bedtime routine. So setting up a nice routine, we'll go over this in a little bit, but setting up a nice routine, if you don't have one, your brain doesn't really have a trigger to know, okay, it's actually time for me to get ready for bed. Multi-purpose bedroom, I know for those of you who live in the dorms, this is like, yeah, what am I supposed to do? But using your bedroom for other activities could also be stimulating because your brain doesn't know that when I go into this room, it's time for me to get ready for bed. It might be, this is where I study, this is where I do watch TV, all of those things. And then just an improper environment, so if it's too hot, too cold, noisy, bright lights, all of those things are stimulating.
Medical conditions can also affect your sleep. We've got mood disorders, pain, sleep apnea, a lot of TMJ, so clenching your jaw when you're trying to sleep will give us some headaches. It can also kind of cause some tightness in the jaw, so it doesn't want to relax like it should. Restless leg syndrome or periodic limb movement, if you've ever been laying there and then all of a sudden you jump yourself awake, that's your periodic limb movement too. Narcolepsy, so those people are tired all the time. They can fall asleep at the drop of a hat, but they're tired all the time and their quality of sleep isn't quite as good as it should be.
So positive, how do we improve our sleep? I want to talk back a little bit towards those dimensions. Like I said, getting a good night's sleep can impact our dimensions of wellness, but also we can think of improving our sleep by approaching it through our dimensions of wellness. So we start with environment. If we can get we kind of call it like the sleep sanctuary, turning your room and turning your bedroom into that like very comfortable space for you, whether that is having blackout curtains, maybe using a sleep mask if that's not an option for you. I know in college I had a roommate that was on her computer until 4 a.m. in the morning, so there was always this like glowing light in my room. So maybe a sleep mask would have helped me a little bit. Earplugs, I'm gonna call Mariah out. I know she'll be fine with this, but Mariah she likes a sound machine and she'll actually travel with a sound machine, and keeping that consistent, if that's something that brings you comfort, trying to keep that consistency. If you're traveling, if you have a sound machine, you can take it with you. Cool temperature, comfortable bedding, and then using that bed only for sleep or sex. Preparing for sleep is also important. So that, again, that routine. We all love our afternoon coffee. I know I certainly do, but trying to avoid coffee after a certain time of day. Some research says avoid it up to even 8 hours before you're gonna go to bed. So think about that cutoff time when you wanna fall asleep. Try to stop drinking coffee by that point. 4 p.m. for sure is definitely like you should probably not have any more coffee at that point. Reducing alcohol consumption in the evening. We talked a little bit like alcohol might make you feel sleepy, but it's actually going to impact those like deeper cycles of sleep. It's going to keep you from falling into those like really restful cycles, and so it's just going to keep you in more of a light sleep. It's really going to impact your sleep. Again, like we said, turning off our electronics, putting it away, putting it in another room. I know you read an article that said even just having your phone in your room, even if you're not looking at it, there was like an electrical disturbance, and it was recommending not even having your phone in your room with you. And then again, just that routine so that your brain is triggered to know I'm ready to fall asleep. If we think about, again, those wellness dimensions, those are kind of more of those physical things that we can do. That relationship with your digital technology, that digital wellness, that also is a way that you can improve your sleep. And then I think of like the mindfulness, the emotional piece, that's creating that routine, that's that meditation, getting into those, maybe using different types of breathing exercises. So I know our counseling center is really great about talking about this, but there's the square breathing. So it's breathing in for 4 counts, holding it for 4 counts, breathing out for 4 counts, and holding it out for 4 counts. And that's a calming breathing technique. There's also visualization that you can do. You have a great one that you like to talk about. You want to share that?
I think I'll save it. If anyone wants it, I'll give it to you afterwards.
And journaling and meditation. Those are other 2. Yeah. And again, like we said, if you want to take sleep aids, that's something you certainly should talk to your provider about, making sure that you have that conversation with them before you take them. Anything you want to add?
No, I really like, the thought of when you're an athlete and you're training and you're a professional basketball player, you practice every day, right? And that's how you get so good at what you're doing. When we're trying to sleep, it's not something where you're just going to get it right away. If something's bothering you in your life, you've got to address it. If there's something that, you're doing the screens, you address that part. So you got to keep going at it. It's not a one and done thing. It's lifelong, and that's why we're here, to work on your wellness, including your sleep.
Thank you.
Thank you both for that. I think we all recognize the impact a good night's sleep can have on our day, right? I know from personal experience that just making a few slight behavior changes can drastically improve my quality of sleep, so I really appreciate you speaking to that. Our next presenter is no stranger to the speaker circuit, as she spent a great deal of time spreading mental health awareness across the state of South Dakota. Katie Milbrandt is a 4th-year SDSU student majoring in architecture and minoring in studio arts. Aside from being a full-time student, Katie competes in pageants through the Miss America and Miss South Dakota organizations and currently holds the title of Miss Hub City 2024, while previously holding the title of Miss SDSU 2023. Katie's also a fitness instructor at the Miller Wellness Center. Let's give a warm welcome to Katie Milbrandt.
All right, thank you, Travis. And I just want to start by saying that I'm really excited to be here. Mental health is a really important topic to me, and you'll hear a little bit more about why later. But for now, I want to give you a glimpse into what we'll be talking about today. So, first, I'll talk a little about me and what the silent struggle is to so many of us. Then we'll look at the problem that exists in our society and the implication of that problem. So, in other words, why is this important? And finally, we'll talk about how we can solve this together. But first, I want to introduce you to little Katie. The picture on the left is a picture of my sister and I. The one in the middle is me on my first birthday, and then the one on the right is of my sister on the left, me in the middle, and then my cousin on the right. So I was introduced to mental health and mental illness at a really young age. I have both friends and family that are directly affected by mental illness, and I've seen firsthand what the not-so-good side of mental illness can look like. My sister on the left, she's my biggest role model, and sadly I had to learn what mental illness was from her own struggles. In many ways, my family members were part of this silent struggle, so let's take a moment to understand what that is. When I say the word silent struggle, what do I mean by that? I'm talking about the millions of people across the globe who deal with mental illness completely alone. And a lot of those people are right here in our community, and I was one of them. So let's look at these statistics. There's too many people in the world silently struggling with their mental health. 1 in 5 US adults experience mental illness each year, and I'm one of those 5. I have depression and anxiety. 12,000 South Dakotans aged 12 to 17 have depression, and of that number, 47.5%, so almost half of those people didn't receive any care last year. Now, why is that, and why is it important? Well, it could be due to lack of resources, so not having resources available in their area, or they just don't know where to look. It could also be the cost of resources, so therapy or medication being too expensive. It could be the fear of shame or embarrassment due to the stigma surrounding mental health and mental illness. Or it could just be the lack of knowledge. They simply don't know where to go or what to do to get help. It's also nearly impossible for people to identify mental health problems in others. A lot of the time, people don't outwardly show their struggles or signs of mental health struggles, hence silently struggling. The person who is struggling needs to feel safe enough to speak up, and the stigma around mental health is what is silencing people. Data shows that over 40% of men have never talked about their mental health. So we know this is a problem, and in fact, we've known it's a problem for years. So where's our sense of urgency, and why is it important that we solve this now? Research shows that the rate of suicide continues to increase every single year. And this is a result of untreated mental illness and the stigma surrounding it, as well as the lack of resources in our communities and in our school systems. Today, we're losing one person every 11 minutes to suicide. And simply put, that means that one person will die during my presentation alone from suicide. Ultimately, if we don't address the fact that so many people are silently struggling, people could find themselves in a time of crisis or even making a life-threatening decision. Just to go over some pictures briefly, that on the left is of me presenting at a school in Pierre, and then the one in the middle is just a picture of me happy, and then the one on the right is me at an event at the Children's Museum. I got to have a little daddy-daughter dance with a lot of girls and their fathers in the community. So, like I said before, I was introduced to mental health at a very young age. I saw my loved ones struggle firsthand with their own mental health. And in high school, I was bullied a lot, which led to me being negatively impacted by my mental health. This also led me to change schools for my junior and senior year of high school, where I had a better experience, and I was really eager to come to SDSU and explore a new place, meet new people, and pave the way toward my future. One week during spring semester of my freshman year, I got one of those phone calls that you don't want to get. It was a phone call from my mom in the early hours of the morning on the Sunday morning, telling me that my cousin had died from suicide the night prior. I didn't believe what she was telling me. I couldn't believe my ears, and I tried convincing myself that I was still dreaming. And it was a really hard grieving process, especially being alone and 4 hours away from my family. Thankfully, I was able to attend her celebration of life a few months later and process my emotions with my family and my loved ones. Fast forward a whole year during spring semester of my sophomore year. That's where things went south. I went from enjoying life every day to not wanting to experience life. I was unmotivated, detached, and just wanted to be alone. I wasn't eating enough, or I was eating too much. I would skip the gym for 3 days straight and then make it up by spending 6 hours in the gym in one day. Without realizing it, I was in a really dark place and digging myself into a deeper hole. And it was on Valentine's Day of 2022 when my life changed forever. February 14th was the day I tried to commit suicide. I was willing to give up 17 years of education. I was willing to say goodbye to my friends and my family and my loved ones and give up on my goals, my dreams, and my whole future. But I got help before it was too late. And I'm so proud to stand here and say that I overcame the silent struggle. And that's why I'm here today talking about mental health with all of you. Now, let's look at some solutions that helped me along my journey. First is advocate. So strength comes in numbers. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for others and loved ones who struggle with their mental health. And do what you can to advocate. For me, this looks like sharing my story at schools across the state from my partnership with NAMI South Dakota, or authentically posting on my social media about how I'm feeling or showing things that I do to help myself when I'm struggling. And it's also speaking at events just like this one. Advocating can also look like sharing your personal struggles, attending events in the community about mental health, and just openly talking about mental health, just like you would talk about your plans for the weekend. Next is support. We rise by lifting others. Be there for others how you'd want someone to be there for you. Just like you need a helping hand during a difficult time, be that for someone else. Support can look different every single time. It could be a simple hello in passing to brighten someone's day, or listening to a friend talk about something that's going on in their life. No matter what, your support helps, I promise. Next, educate. Knowledge is power. Share your knowledge with others. Again, this is why I do what I do. I share my experiences to educate others so we can learn and move forward together to create a community that is more accepting of mental health and mental illness. Lastly, but certainly not least, is ask. Asking for help is a sign of strength. This is something that took me years to learn, and I'm still learning today, but you can't always get to where you want to be alone, and some extra support never hurts. And also, have your go-to people, the ones who will take the time out of their day to help you. And for me, this is my mom. She's the most incredible woman to ever walk the earth, and I would not be standing here today if it wasn't for her constant and unconditional support. So if I can leave you with one last thing, let it be this, the overarching statement that I choose to live my life by. Love without cause. This is my first tattoo at 18 years old. My mom, she was really against me getting a tattoo, and I said, Mom, I have this saying that I really just love, and it's something that I really want to just portray in my life no matter what. So she let me do it, of course, with my own money. But it holds a special place in my heart. It's my first tattoo, but simply put, you don't need a reason to be kind. You can love people just because. Be kind because you can, not because you should be. Uplift others to see them and help them succeed. We all should be kind to others and love everyone without a cause because you never know what someone is going through. And lastly, don't forget to be kind to yourself, just like you'd want someone else to be kind to you, because you matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. That was an incredibly powerful message that I think we all recognize has a tremendous impact on the people around us, the people that we love. I think we also recognize that the topic of mental health has carried a stigma for too long. So I find it incredibly inspiring when brave individuals such as Katie will step forward to share their stories of hope and to spread awareness and create a community of support. So again, thank you, Katie, for sharing your story with us today. You're an incredible, tremendous change agent and an advocate for a worthy cause. Our next presenter is a highly respected and popular faculty member here at SDSU. Bruce Johnson is an instructor of management at the Ness School of Management and Economics. He has taught a wide range of business management classes at South Dakota State University and the University of Sioux Falls. He also has worked as a business consultant for numerous for-profit, nonprofit, startups, and learning organizations. Bruce routinely speaks to organizations about personal development and organizational well-being. Bruce also has an MBA from the University of Sioux Falls, and before his academic career, he worked in commercial banking and previously served in the United States Marine Corps. Please help me welcome Bruce Johnson.
Nothing will unnerve you as much as hearing somebody read your bio. We're all good until that came. Hello, excited to be here. I didn't know, Travis told me some of the topics that we're going to be talked about. I didn't know that it was so spot on with what I'm going to talk about. So my talk's a little bit academic. Let me just start with this. So a number of months ago, I was working with a nonprofit organization in town. And they had asked me to come in, look at their numbers and their financials, give them any thoughts that I had. And we were going through it, and as we were doing that, I started talking, and I was talking a lot about psychology. And one of the ladies there looked at me and said, aren't you the numbers guy? Why are you talking about psychology? And I kind of told her, because we can program the numbers. The numbers are what the numbers are. It's the issue is making the decision. It's all psychological. And if I told you guys, or told her, here's what you need to do, she probably wouldn't do it. She'd probably tell me to go fly a kite. I mean, seriously, that's the issue. It's the psychology. So I was going to talk to you a little bit about that today. Kind of neat, I was listening to a podcast a month ago, and for sure the one true thing is when we look at wealthy people and successful people, there's two common denominators that have been there, and that's really what has stayed the same over the years in the world of wealth and success and finance and those types of things. And those two things are, one, a locus of control, locus, not locust, okay? Locus of control and a growth mindset. So what these are, locus of control, I don't have a good way of explaining that, I guess. Let me try this. So a number of years ago, I had to teach this at a class, and I had about 6 or 8 students in the class, and we were talking about behavioral economics, which is not a thrill. We were going through this stuff, and I thought, well, instead of trying to explain this to them, I'm going to have them take one of these psychometric tests that we use and see what they get as a result. And the only thing I told them before they got the results was it's usually preferable to have something called an internal locus of control. And there's internal locus and external locus. So I couldn't have scripted this better. The students took the test, and this one young lady, she got done, and she kind of asked me, she said, wait, what was the one that we wanted? And I said, an internal locus of control. And she said, oh, you gotta be kidding me, I have the worst luck. And the guy sitting next to her kind of looks over at her, and of course he catches on to what this locus of control thing is, and he's like, you're insane. A locus of control is how you perceive the world unfolding. Okay, with an external locus of control, you kind of think things happen to you. You blame things, you know. Both the students that took this test, they actually both did very poorly on the final exam. If I were to ask her why she did poorly on it, it was because I was a bad teacher or my tests were too hard. Young man that took it, he got an internal locus of control. If I ask him what happened, he'd say, I didn't study enough. I stayed up too late the night before. Something like that. He'd take responsibility for it. So again, we know typically successful, wealthy folks have an internal locus of control, okay? Now, here's the interesting part. When we talk about university students, graduates especially, what we find is they often have too strong of a locus of control. They try to micromanage. They get anxious and anxiety trying to study for tests and make sure they control things. If we see them in the workplace, they're often trying to micromanage things. And you ask, well, how would you mitigate that? How do you control that? And the answer is everything that was talked about earlier. It's usually emotional wellness and emotional intelligence. Those two things help mitigate that. That's about the only thing. The one I would add is often spirituality does a great deal to mitigate that because you're learning to accept that, well, figure out exactly what you can control in this life and what you can't control. So the other one was a growth mindset. Now this one's kind of interesting. Prior to 1999, a growth mindset was the idea of how much you believe somebody's willing to change or how much somebody can change. Any of you take the Clifton Gallup Strength Finders before? Yeah, a number of you. So that came from a book from the Gallup organization called First Break All the Rules, and it looked at what the greatest managers, how they see things differently, what they do, so on and so forth. And one of the things they realized is the world's greatest managers often don't think people can change that much. So you had these two worlds of sort of psychology that came crashing together. And they said, well, a growth mindset's a belief that things can change, and the world's greatest managers say they don't. So we had an academic, I can't remember her name, I think it's Carol Dweck, redid this whole growth mindset in 2006. And by the way, on the back of the sheet here that I gave you is there's about 10 different psychometric tests. They're free of charge if you'd like. A lot of this information is free anymore, and her test is on there to see if you have a growth mindset. Again, you might be asking, well, what is a growth mindset? Most of us know the opposite of that. So we're going to have a little fun here. The opposite of a growth mindset is usually linear thinking. How many of you worked hard to get good grades in high school? Okay, why? Not because mom told you to. Okay, compete against your friends. How many did it to get into college? Yeah, okay. Why'd you want to go to college? To get a good job. Why'd you want to get a good job? To make money. Why'd you want to make money? If you go to the end of this, it's actually you're trying to avoid pain. That's linear thinking. What we know is usually wealthy, successful folks don't look at the world in that light. Why is that? Well, up here on the top, most of us that are linear thinkers, and I am as linear thinking as you could get. Most of us look at the world and we say, okay, get good grades, go to college, get a job, and it's this nice, smooth plan heading to the top there. The world doesn't unfold like that. We all know that. Even usually 25-year-olds have already experienced enough. They're like, whoa, this can get rocky. It's more like the bottom diagram here. And this was a neat meme I saw online one day, is your plan and then here's reality. So we have ups and downs. Any of you ever watched the movie Parenthood with Steve Martin? Anybody remember that one? Watched that when I was a kid, and then I watched it as a parent, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you laugh all over again. The insanity of having kids and the ups and the downs and all of that. So that's how the world unfolds. What we know from folks that have a growth mindset now is that wherever they're at, they're looking at options. They're trying to look at the world in terms of options and alternatives, and they try to make as many of those as we can. So this meme, I added a few things here. Sorry for those of you that are online. I don't know if I've got a laser here. I got a military grade laser, we're good. So if you can see, nope, still can't see it. The bubble diagram, if you can kind of see my laser, shoots off into 5, 6 different areas there. That's what we're talking about. It's looking at the world in terms of, okay, I could do this, I could go here, I could try this. A few months ago, I had a gentleman come in and speak, so I talk about this growth mindset and creating options, and really it's problem solving. And had him come in because this was one of the best examples of a growth mindset I'd ever seen. So this gentleman goes to a fairly, I have to be careful since I don't have permission to give this story. Started at an organization, think of it like a law firm. And throughout about a 35-year period, he went from like practicing law basically to running into one problem with a set of clients. So he started a business to solve that problem. And then he solved another business to solve another problem he ran into, and another business until now he oversees 35 different businesses. These aren't small businesses. This is hundreds of millions of dollars in business that this guy grew. How did he do it? He was just solving problems. I mean, he figured out a way to capitalize on it, but that's what it was. If you talk to him, it was comical. Most of the students that listen to him are like, he's not talking about money. He's not talking about business. He's talking about getting excited about solving problems and looking at the world just a little bit differently. And when you look at kind of all this stuff, that's what it is. It's not money. Money is a function of living a good life. It's a function of working to solve problems. So anyway, that's what has stayed the same in terms of trying to generate wealth. There are a few things that are different. Got too many of these things here. Okay, so I added 4 or 5 different, ones that have changed here and some knowledge that we've gained over about the last 10 years. So this comes from the editor of Money Magazine. Money Magazine is no longer, it's now Kiplinger's magazine, but it was so comical. The last article she wrote, she mentioned all this stuff in this magazine is absolutely great. It's good information. But there's 3 or 4 things, if you do those things, you're probably going to be fine. And I would absolutely agree with that. One of them is, she said, you need to have an emergency fund equal to about 6 months worth of your monthly expenses or average expenses. Somewhere in there, I would say if you're married, if you have kids, probably should be closer to 9 months. Now, the one that's really changed, it used to be said that you need to save about 10% of your income to retire by age 65. I just ran into somebody here a little bit ago, and we were talking how they're a pensioner. They received a standard pension plan from years ago, which is a defined benefit plan. When she retires, she will receive a paycheck until the day she dies, which will be a long, long time away. But most of the rest of us have a defined contribution plan. We have to decide how much we're going to put and set away for retirement, and it goes into something like a 401k or 403b plan. So those are the difference. Now, for many, many years, up till about 2012, it was said you need to set aside 10% of your income. That changed. It's now 15 to 20%, which is a lot. Unfortunately, the rates of return and kind of the lack of inflation over the last 10 years have caused that to have to go up because the rates of return have gone down. So that's higher. The reason I bring that up is because I've been to so many places where I hear very well-meaning people talk about make sure you save 10%. And it's much higher than that now. It's 15 to 20, unfortunately. The other thing she said is make sure you spend money on experiences and not things. Have any of you heard of the Harvard Grant Study? This is such a cool study. It's one of the longest social science studies ever conducted. And it looked at college graduates from the 1940s all the way up until they passed away, most of them 80 to 90 years old, and then it spawned off into other studies. And when they researched it, they asked these folks at their end of their life, what made this worth living? What was the best? And they said, it's not the money, although you don't want to probably have financial problems, but it's the relationships. That's the thing, that one thing, the relationships. That's what matters. And these were wildly successful people, okay? And they said it's the relationships. So it's not the money. In fact, when you begin to understand money, it's a function of living a healthy life. And you see that in that one there. One other one that I've seen often is if you are married and both hopefully gainfully employed, you might want to try living off of one income and see what happens. I would say most of the folks I get to interview and talk to that are wealthy and often wealthier at younger ages, we find that's something they try to do. And it's amazing how much can be saved and then what can be done. Many small business owners, well, mid-sized business owners, come from that. And the only other one I want to quickly talk about, some of you, I'm sure, know who Dave Ramsey is, okay? And he's wildly huge program on Fox Business and talks about trying to get out of debt and be careful with debt. And I want to warn any college students with that one. His advice, we find, is really good for about 20% of the population in the college classroom. It's actually very bad advice for about 80%. There's actually a test on the back here that you can take that will tell you if that's you. We find about 70 to 80% of students somewhere in there are actually, we call them money hoarders or amassers. So these are people that try to do very wise things with their money. If you follow Dave Ramsey's advice, well, you're not going to be able to because those two things don't necessarily coincide. So if you're interested, I'll be around for a little bit and can talk to you about any of it at great length. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. I think the point you made on adaptability is incredibly important, especially when you're talking about the dimensions of wellness. Because as Bruce was pointing out, life doesn't play out in a linear means, right? Like we know that life is going to throw curveballs at you. So even when you're talking about the financial wellness and even recognizing in today's situation where we see the economy constantly changing and the cost of goods and services are going up and now we have to adapt, right? And that can cause stress and it can cause an impact on our overall well-being. And so being able to adapt is incredibly important. And so with that in mind, we're gonna have our second wellness guide come up here because she's gonna talk about behavior changes and sustaining those changes. And so whether that's investing in your financial wellness or any of the other dimensions of wellness, being able to make small, simple changes is gonna have a tremendous impact on your overall well-being. So Mariah Weber is a registered dietitian currently serving as the Assistant Director of Programs and Development at the South Dakota State University Miller Wellness Center. Mariah holds both her Bachelor of Science and Master of Science degrees in Nutritional Sciences from SDSU. In her current role, she provides nutrition counseling and wellness coaching to students, staff, faculty, and community members. Additionally, Mariah oversees and supervises the areas of health promotion, fitness, and memberships. As one of our wellness guides, as I mentioned before, Mariah is going to connect our three presentations by helping us understand how we can create and sustain those behavior changes. Please help me welcome Mariah Weber.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Travis, for the introduction. So on your tables, there was a packet, and within that packet, there is a personal assessment. So I encourage you to go, if you want to start it now, you're more than welcome. You can also take it home, but this is really a way for you to assess where your current well-being is at and identify any changes that you might want to make. So the 8 different dimensions that Sherry introduced in the beginning of the presentation are all listed, and it's a really great tool to have if you just want to assess on a regular basis. So I usually recommend assessing every 6 months to kind of see where your wellness is sitting, and like Sherry showed that graphic, see what 2 dimensions are maybe in the lead and the dimensions that you might want to improve. So I am going to briefly talk about how to put this all together. Maybe you've already thought about some changes that you're wanting to make with the 3 presentations, and I'm just going to briefly talk about how you create behavior change and where you start. So in my role as a dietitian, I do a lot of behavior change counseling, a lot of motivational interviewing, and usually the first thing that people do is they start way too big. So we're going to start really small, and I'm hoping that you're going to leave here maybe having something written down on a change that you're wanting to make or something that you're wanting to switch around in your lifestyle. So you don't have to do it now because we probably don't have the assessment completed, but when you do get home and you do this assessment, what I want you to do is I want you to select one dimension that you scored lower in and are ready to improve. So it could be the emotional dimension, it could be the financial dimension, it can be any of the dimensions you heard today, or any one on here that maybe you scored lower in. Because on the back of the assessment, there is a place where you can actually score and figure out the one that you were the lowest in. So I want you to write that down on the bottom of the page after you do the assessment so that it can kind of guide you through what steps you're needing to make. Then after you identify that dimension, I want you to select one strategy that you'd like to focus on within the selected dimension. So the example that I put up here is actually in I think it's in the environmental dimension. So I just placed on here, I participate in events that help my community. And that was one thing that I wanted to change. I guess not me personally, but that was the example that I came up with. So I participate in events that help my community. And that is something that, with this example, I was wanting to change. So with that, whatever statement you select, I want you to think about where your motivation is at, what obstacles you foresee. So if you feel like you don't participate enough in your community or provide enough service, what would some of the obstacles be for you to improve that dimension? What are the benefits of changing? What are the benefits of staying the same? And then I also want you to explore your support system. Is there anybody around you within your family or friends that you can rely on if you feel like things aren't going well? So those are just a couple of things that I want you to identify as you are picking which dimension and which strategy you're going to want to change. Next, I'll have you write down one measurable goal for each strategy you've identified. Now, we just started with one, so one dimension, one strategy, one change. So the example that I provided within that environmental piece is within the next 2 weeks, I will identify one service event happening within my community, and I will sign up to participate. So that's how we start. We start very small. Notice I didn't say, I'm gonna go to an event. We're gonna identify one event within the next 2 weeks. And that is how you start with behavior change. You start very small, and you make it harder as you go. So I'm sure we've all seen the SMART acronym for behavior change, but with that example, I want you to notice that it's very specific, it's measurable because we said we're gonna identify one, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time-based because we gave ourselves 2 weeks. And this is what you'll do for any dimension that you've identified. And then just some sustaining tips. Always want to start slow and make it really easy because you can always make it harder as you go. If you feel like the dimension that you chose just isn't really what you're wanting to do or where you're wanting to change, then you focus your efforts somewhere else and you use the same strategy for the rest of the dimensions. So choose one strategy to change and do it well and start with something easy to achieve and then slowly enhance the degree of difficulty. More times than not, when I see somebody for nutrition changes or exercise changes, it's I'm gonna exercise every day and I'm gonna eat healthy. And those are very just broad goals and thoughts. So it's really kind of narrowing it down to I am going to walk into the Miller Wellness Center one time a week and participate in a group fitness class. So again, very small, and then continue to make it harder. And then just common pitfalls to anticipate, changing everything at one time. Again, that's why we're starting with one. Starting with a really large habit, so break that habit down and figure out the steps. So when I gave the example of exercise, it could even be, I need new exercise shoes, or I need new shoes to actually get to a class. So that could be your first step. And then again, another pitfall is not changing your environment. So taking a look at that and what that looks like and what you need to do to get that squared away. I will give a plug for the Miller Wellness Center. With all of these presentations that you heard today, we have wonderful support in our building. So we are open to the entire community. And we have our fitness and recreation side, personal training, nutrition services. We have our well-being specialist, Caitlin, who can walk you through any other changes that you're wanting to make. And we also have our student health clinic and counseling. So if you're a student in this room, another wonderful resource if you have any concerns regarding your physical health or your mental health. So lastly, I just want to leave you with, on your path to create change, invite compassion and embrace and accept where you are. Only from a place of compassion will your efforts move into fruition. Thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to Travis to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mariah, for that. It is encouraging to know that it's just those small, simple changes that can have such a lasting impact on our wellness. And so I really appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate the message that has come across from all of our presenters today, driving to that point. Well, I will tell you, we are at the end of our seminar, folks, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the event, our aim with this seminar was to ignite your interest and help you jumpstart your wellness journey. And we hope that in some way, this helps you take that next step to a healthier you. I want to thank our wellness guides, and I want to thank our presenters. You all were incredibly amazing, and I can't thank you enough for sharing your insights and your best practices and, of course, those powerful stories. It's very much appreciated. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. There are still some refreshments out there. Please help yourself, and have a great night. Thank you.